Hello, good evening. Hello there, friends. Okay, here we are. Leticia Callava and I welcome you to La Vista Latina. Thank you for being with us. All right, so we have a new year in a day and a few hours. 2021 will be here. Our arms are ready for a vaccine. We have a Democrat heading for the White House in 21 days, but we lost Florida. And we ask ourselves over and over again, how did it happen? How did the Sunshine State lose? And how was it possible that church going people, conservative people, people that are physically conservative, and how could they vote for Trump? How is it possible that this man prevail? And will this man survive? Will this man win the hearts of all those religious people, regardless of what he's done? We have invited Daniel Alvarez. He's a professor of religious studies at FIU University, and he's a Democrat. He's a radio talk show host, and I want him to enlighten us because we really need to understand if we're going to move on, and maybe in 4 years we'll be able to make Florida blue. Professor Alvarez, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here with you.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to know a little bit more about you.
Well, people ask me, where are you from? I always say I'm an American from Hialeah. I was born, what are we going to
Where are we all?
Where are we all? I was born in Cuba in 1953. My parents were ministers in the Salvation Army, came to the state. My father came in 1961 because he conspired against Fidel Castro with Rafael Diaz Valar, who's very well known, right, in the Cuban community. A movement called La Rosa Blanca, by the way.
Yes.
I don't know. Did you know about La Rosa Blanca?
The movement.
Yeah. My father was there. He fled in 1961. We couldn't leave. And then we had to wait till 1966 when my mom and I were able to come here. I went to Miami Springs Senior High School and then Stetson University, and then went up north to Boston and stayed there for almost 20 years. I have 2 degrees in theology and philosophy from Harvard University. I'm very proud of that. And I have been teaching at FIU since 1999. So this will be, I believe, my 21st year teaching at FIU. I'm very happy to be there.
You're the perfect person to answer all our questions. We have a few minutes tonight to spend with you, and I want to take advantage of all of it.
Thank you.
You're also a Democrat.
Yes, lifelong Democrat. My parents.
Stress that.
My parents were lifelong Democrats as well.
Which makes it twice as interesting, because we need you and I and all the Democrats that are still trying to figure out what happened to us. Again,
right.
What worries you about the present, about what happened, about looking forward, about our situation, and the people that are really still Trumpites, and the people that really still think that he's going to be president in 21 days?
Yeah, well, it's very disturbing. I just read that a Republican congressman who's been very principled, very opposed to these Republican Trumpists, I call them Trumpists,
good term,
who are they have essentially sold their soul out to the president. There's no other way to say it. He thinks that about 100 of them will go along with a stunt on January 6th to try to overturn the election, led by Tuberville, Mo Brooks, Tuberville, and now Hawley, Josh Hawley from Missouri. He just declared that he's going to oppose the certification. It's very embarrassing, very troubling.
The disarray is playing with democracy.
Yeah. But that's the whole point. These people are anti-democratic, and that to me is very dangerous. These people claim to be Democrats, but they're not. They're pseudo-Democrats, and they're really putting our country in grave danger of losing our democratic heritage. And what worries me, Leticia, is that they don't see it. Let's be clear about this. They think they're doing God's work. And the problem here is that Evangelicals, 80% of them supported the president. The conservative religious people are supporting him in high numbers. What worries me is that Trumpism is, I have to say it, from the point of view as an analyst of religious phenomena for all my life, it's a cult. I have no other way to describe it.
You consider it a cult?
It's a cult. Yeah.
It has all the characteristics of a cult?
Of a cult. Look, you have a leader who demands absolute loyalty. Excuse me. You have followers who blindly follow him. You have a leader who demonizes everyone who does not agree with him, calls them communist, globalist. He brings a coalition of essentially deranged people, the QAnon people, right? The ultra right-wing fanatics that are following him, and then they demonize us. So anybody who disagrees with the president is essentially evil. And once you have that kind of a worldview, that's very characteristic, Leticia, of cults. The leaders isolate their followers. They tell them, look, only I have the truth. I am right. I am never wrong. I can never lose. You have to devote your life completely to my cause because my cause is the cause of God. And by the way, I'm not exaggerating. Paula White, his spiritual advisor, said, and I'm quoting her, to go against Trump is to go against God.
But Professor,
that tells it all.
But what baffles me is the man has been divorced 3 times. It's okay, but for a religious group, it's not a good thing. He has over a dozen assault charges, sexual assault charges, or he also promotes violence. He's a racist. He goes against the grain of everything that is like Christian or religious or a behavior that is completely different than what you and I were taught. How can that phenomena be happening?
Well, there are 2 ways I can explain it to you. I started by saying that this is, to me, clearly has all the characteristics of a cult, right? Cult followers. Mm-hmm. The problem with a cult is that even though the leader may do outrageous things, and if you look at all cult leaders, they have done outrageous things. Jim Jones, Guyana, was a highly immoral person, right? Cult leaders, David Koresh in Waco, Texas, same thing, right? Highly immoral individually. But people never notice that because that's what a cult is. A cult idealizes the leader to a degree that anything that he, or in this case, he does wrong is simply overlooked or it didn't happen. That's one of the problems that we have with Trumpism. These are people who blindly follow the president and refuse to acknowledge any wrongdoing on his behalf, that he's done. The other problem here is that even those who see his failings, right, even though see his racism, his, I call it misogynism, right, against women, they overlook that because he's a means to an end. And this is the way they justify it. They can be very cynical, some of these people. They say, look, he's a means to an end. He got all the right judges, right, appointed to the federal court.
Yes, he did that. Right.
Court. So they see him kind of, okay, he's not as important as what God is using him as an instrument for the good. And that's the other way cult members justify and kind of overlook the failings of this individual. And by the way, the words that these people have used, like I've heard people say he's the Son of God, he's like Jesus, he's Cyrus the Great.
Said he was
they're attributed to him semi-divine attributes and that allows them simply to overlook, right, and kind of push under the rug all these other failings that you and I are noticing. And they themselves would notice it on anybody else, but not in the cult leader. And he has totally, honestly, Leticia, this is very worrisome. He has captured their minds to a degree that I don't know how these people are going to come out of this. In fact, I don't even know how the Republican Party is going to be able to recover from Trumpism because, as you know, 74 million people voted for this man.
They did.
That to me is very worrisome.
What worries me more is not what's going to happen to the Republican Party, but how are we going as a nation going to come out of this? How is Biden going to be able to work with these evangelicals? Is there a way that this can
Sure.
be dealt with?
Sure. Well, they have. Listen, the evangelical movement is not entirely monolithic, almost monolithic behind Trump, but there's that 20%. That has noticed what you and I are noticing. People from Christianity Today, people in the Southern Baptist Convention have come out and said, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. Other pastors, particularly in the mainline churches, right, are very aware. They're not evangelical, but they consider them Christians. So there has to be a renaissance, a kind of soul searching among Christians in America who are supporting the president and saying, what have we done? And let me tell you why this is worrisome. It happened in Germany. When Hitler came to power, some of these people, Christians, I'm talking about Christian Germans, sold their souls to Hitler, and they created a church that was loyal to Hitler personally. And their symbol was, here's the cross of Christ, and then on top of the cross, the swastika. And these people thought that Hitler was essentially God's instrument, exactly the same way that Trumpists describe Trump. And that is what's worrisome. That's why I keep insisting we're dealing here with a cult. These people need to be deprogrammed. Now, what is going to be the solution? Or what could be a possible solution? Let me be blunt about this. We need some kind of deprogramming. There's detoxification. No question about that. But here's the key. I may be a Democrat. You're a Democrat. But the people, and I have to say it, let's give credit where credit is due. The people that have saved us from falling into essentially the de facto coup. I'm very proud, by the way. I don't like the New York Post. They have been totally Trumpist all the way. But yesterday, they came out with an editorial where they said, Mr. President, you're trying to do a coup d'etat. That is very important. That is very important. Same thing, the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal that is very conservative, also the National Review. A lot of people now in the conservative world, not just the anti-Trump conservatives, Republicans, but a lot of people who supported the president have realized now that this man is out of control and that he's willing to risk everything to stay in power. And they kind of realize, oh my God, what are we supporting here? That's why I think that New York Post editorial is fundamental. The other fundamental thing is that the people who saved us from collapsing or degenerating into essentially a coup are the Republicans in the swing states that stood up to the president and did not allow themselves to be pressured. And judges and secretaries of state, commissioners of election, officers of election, they resisted. They resisted Trumpism. They're still being attacked. Today, he said to Kemp, the governor of Georgia, who's been loyal to the president, he said, you should resign. Yes. So, in other words, we need to build, for the good of the country, some bridges with these Republicans who realize that what the president has done, and together with that coalition, not because we're going to agree with Republicans on everything. That's not the point I'm trying to make. But we need right now to save the nation from Trumpism. We need to build that coalition so that we can push Trumpism into the fringe of American political life. My problem is, how is that going to be done? It's going to be one hell of a challenge. Sorry to tell you.
We have a president a president-elect, who is a good, kind, church-going Christian. So that I'm mentioning all those terms because this is what the evangelicals and the ultra conservatives are looking at. This is a man that literally practices the Catholicism. The man is a good man. The man is a kind man. Is his personality, his character, very important in this transition, in this moment, to capture the attention? Can he do it?
Well, I think he can, because look, he's had 40 years in the Senate. He has credibility on both sides of the aisle. He's a practicing Christian. And by the way, since you mentioned his Christianity, a lot of conservative Catholics are saying, oh, he's not a Christian because he believes in abortion. Let me clarify this for anybody who has any doubts about this. Joe Biden, I have read his statements. He believes in that human life begins at conception. He's against personally abortion. But as president of the United States, he recognizes there are many people in this country that do not agree with the sentiments and the creed of his own church. Therefore, he cannot impose his religious creed on the nation. Individual freedom, individual right is essential to our government and to the Constitution of the United States. He has to respect the other people who do not agree with him, but he himself does not agree with abortion. I'm really resentful, Leticia, of people who accuse him of not being a Christian. No, he's a practicing Christian. He, as president, though, from a point of view of the Constitution, he cannot impose. No one can impose a creed, a religious, metaphysical, philosophical point of view on anybody else.
So he's the man that we have our best chance. He's the best chance we have for this transition to appease this. Now,
by the way, I'm sorry, Leticia, can I reply? I answered only part of the question. Let me answer the other question. Why I believe he can do it. Remember who's supporting him? A lot of Republicans like John Kasich, whom I deeply admire. John Kasich supports him. A lot of other Republicans, I cannot mention them all.
John McCain.
Yes. His widow supports him. A lot of people are supporting him. That means he knows that he has the trust of many people in this country who are not Trumpists. They may not agree with him on everything, but they realize that he's the man of the hour. He's the only one that can be a bridge to sanity. We need sanity in the White House. We need to restore our alliances with the rest of the world. Right now, Joe Biden is that stabilizing force, and that's why many Republicans, including Republicans in Miami, whom I talked to on my radio show, that's why they supported Biden. We're not going to make a cult out of Biden. He's not the savior of the world, right? This is the problem with Trumpism. They believe Trump is the savior of the world. That's what's dangerous about Trumpism. Biden is a bridge to sanity, and I think he can bring the nation together. Trumpists will never accept them. Look, even Newt Gingrich said, I'm never going to recognize him as president. The Proud Boys said, we're not going to recognize him as president. What kind of insanity is that? This challenge, by the way, on January 6th, is so bizarre, Leticia.
Insane.
The courts have spoken. The president had his day in court. Why are these people doing on January 6th? They're challenging democracy. They're undermining it. And it's very, very tragic. That's why we need to move to sanity. And I hope more and more Republicans, more and more will see it, and the nation will come together, and we will banish Trumpism where it belongs, to the fringes of our society, not at the core, not at the center.
From your mouth to God's ears. But let me tell you something. I have friends and relatives who are Cuban born, like you and I, that believe that Trump, and they're religious people who are constantly saying, oh, God save us. God save this country. The Democrats are coming. This is going to be horrible. I don't believe the election was stolen. I don't believe it. I cannot believe that this is happening to us. And let me tell you, my friend, Professor, they are obstinate about it. They are not going to give an inch. And that surprises me so much, involving also the fact that they called us socialists, the Democrat socialists, when they know that Trump had a relationship with Russia, still does. So all these values, those religious values, those political values are completely erased from their mind. What is going on?
Okay. The way I present it, and I do it on my show, by the way, anybody who's watching, please tune in. It's Monday through Friday at 2 o'clock in Radio Caracol 1260, Pasa la Tarde, conmigo, with me, Daniel Alvarez. It's in Spanish, though, but, you know, I think many of you speak Spanish. What I've been telling my audience, and many conservatives and Republicans listen to my show, by the way, not just Democrats. What I'm saying is this. If you are going to analyze truth, the only way you can get to truth is when there was a consensus. Now, I said, I think a couple of days ago on my show, and I'm going to repeat it for your audience. If only the Democrats and the liberals had said there is no fraud, and then all of the Republicans, or many of them, or most of them had said there is fraud, they're going to be worried about fraud. But when I see that the president had his day in court, he was heard, the evidence was not presented to overturn the election. Even William Barr, who's been loyal to him, said there is no massive fraud to overturn the election. when these Republicans in these swing states have said there is no massive fraud, there is no fraud, we've done audits after audit, and everything is clean. That is what we have to tell Trumpists. Look what you're doing. You're isolating yourself. If it's not just Democrats that are saying there's no fraud, it's you Republicans that are saying there is no fraud. That's how we arrive at truth.
Don't listen to that.
I know they don't.
They will not accept what you're saying because we're preaching to the choir. They will not accept it. What do we do with them? What future do we have with these people that, I mean, in 21 days, they're still going to say that the election was stolen? Yes. What kind of dangers does that have to our democracy?
I just read before we started here that former advisor to or worked with Mike Pence, the vice president, she left in August. She just said, "Look, the president is willing to stoke the flames of violence. He's willing, right, by his tweeting, by his demonizing of the Republicans. He's demonizing Republicans, not just Democrats. He's attacking his own people. He's destroying his own party." What I hope now is that people are beginning, hopefully, and by the way, I'm kind of pessimistic. I think there's a pessimism in your question. I'm worried about this. There's so many of them. All we can do is one day at a time and one voice at a time. I do my job in my show. You do your job in your show. I reach out to Republicans. I reach out to conservatives because right now the battle is not between Democrats and Republicans. The battle is between Democrats and Republicans who are sane and Trumpists who are totally off the rails. That's what's happening here. So that's why I keep saying we need to build bridges to our Republican brothers and sisters so that we can overcome Trumpism. There'll be a day, Leticia, where you and we and Democrats and the Republicans are going to disagree about this policy or that policy or how much taxes we should have or less taxes or Medicare for all. We can debate that. But at least we're operating on the common framework of communication. The other thing I'm going to say, I compare Trumpism to a cult, and that's already dangerous and bad because there's no way to reach. This is the problem with a cult member. You can't reach them because their view of reality has been totally distorted. The other comparison of Trumpists is a schizophrenic. I've had a schizophrenic in the family, a very dear member, and I've had to, I go and spend time with him, and we sit down, and he tells me this: in my view, I'm being persecuted. People are watching me. People are entering my apartment, and I say, Danny, that's not the case. That's not happening. You're imagining this because you're not well. And he says this to me: how did you know? That's your reality. I have my reality. In my reality, that's real. What I tell them is, and I've learned from that discussion, I say to the Trumpists, look at yourself. Now you don't want to read the Wall Street Journal. You don't want to read the National Review. You don't even want to watch Fox. Now you're going to go to Parler because you are running away from people that are telling you that you're wrong. You only listen to people that tell you that you're right. And that's exactly the pathology of a cult and the pathology of a schizophrenic. A schizophrenic sees that he or she is right and everybody else is wrong. And that's a hell of a challenge all of us have.
What brings me now to QAnon, the phenomena of the QAnon followers.
Yes.
Those are in their own mind. They're really schizoids. They really are completely, their reality is completely warped. And and we do have a member of Congress who's a QAnon member or sympathizer. Donald Trump.
Marjorie, I think Marjorie Green, and she's going to be on January 6th. She's going to be supporting Mo Brooke in challenging the certification of the vote.
Exactly. So
you're right.
People have penetrated the Capitol Hill. They have penetrated Capitol Hill. They're penetrating the base of our democracy.
Right.
How do we deal with those schizoids? And
it's by showing them
to grow.
Well, like I said, it's going to be a very, Leticia, listen, I am not naive. I'm 67 years old. I'm kind of a pessimist because I was saying to you there in the show, I'm not optimistic about what I see. I have a 3-year-old, 7-year-old. I have talked to you guys about And I fear for them, the kind of world they're going to live in. It's a world full of hatred and divisions and polarization. My strategy is stick to the facts, stick to the truth. When I say to my people on the radio show, and we all should be saying it, look at the people that are saving our country right now. It's not the liberals, are the very conservative people that you yourself, you Trumpists, are despising because they're challenging the version of reality offered by the president. Hopefully that message will reach some of them, enough for them to say, you know what, we were wrong. You know what I mean? Trumpism is an aberration. And by the way, that has happened to many ex-cult members. After a while, they've come and said, oh my God, how could I have fallen into this? The problem here, and you acknowledge it, I acknowledge it, we're talking, I don't know how many, not 74 million, 40% of that 74 million that voted for the president are in Trump's camp. They're Trumpist diehards. And as this, remember in Arizona, this person from Arizona, the president of the Republican Party of Arizona said, you should declare martial law. You should essentially abolish the Constitution. Michael Flynn, these people are all crazy.
They are completely insane. Completely
Hopefully,
insane.
Hopefully they will see it. Hopefully they will see it. The problem is it's going to be a hard task for them to give it up, because remember, their existence, this is a problem with the thing about why people don't let go of cults. Their whole existence is invested in believing that the president is the Messiah. Think about what I've just said to you. To them, Trump is not just a regular man.
He's the savior.
He's a Messiah. He's a savior. He's God in the flesh. Listen, I teach a philosopher at FIU. His name is Martin Heidegger. Very famous philosopher. But he was a Nazi and an anti-Semite. But a great philosopher. And I always tell my student who he was. I never lied to my student. This guy was a Nazi and an anti-Semite. He might be a great philosopher, but he's definitely a problem. That a man like Heidegger, as brilliant as he was, could become not only a Nazi, but worship Hitler. He called Hitler the highest embodiment, essentially, of a category in Greek philosophy called being. In Spanish, el ser. Think about that for a moment, Leticia. That's what these people have done to Donald Trump. They have elevated him to the status of God. They're giving him divine attributes, and they trust him completely. They've turned over their existence over to him. And that, to me,
Professor, how long will this last? Would Trumpism survive? And for how long do you think this cult, Trumpite cult, will last? How long are we going to hear about him? Is this the fact that he's exiting the White House in 21 days is the beginning of the end, or is it just the trouble is just beginning?
It could be the beginning of the end, but a lot of it will depend on an earlier question you asked me about how efficacious, how good will Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and his team be in governing the country from the center and stopping the polarization. This is the point that we need right now. We need the center to hold, and Joe Biden is going to be a key figure. If he can manage that, then a lot of those people would realize how wrong they were. There were always going to be people on the fringes. It's inevitable. But we need to win over slowly the bulk of them to realize how mistaken they were. But Joe Biden, I think, is going to have to play a critical role. And by the way, Republicans and Democrats, we need to work together for the sake of the nation to get out of this curse and this cult called Trumpism, which is a danger to our democracy.
And to finish our conversation, time just flies. What can you and I, people that are watching us, everybody that is part of this community, this society, not only in Florida, which we hope will be blue in 4 years, but what can we do as individuals to facilitate this positive future, to help Biden and Kamala Harris? How can we do, what little can we do in an everyday life to help out and give it a push?
Well, we cannot reciprocate what they're doing to us. They're calling us, demon-possessed, globalists, socialists, communists. We cannot reply that way to them. We need to build bridges with those sensible people, conservative Republicans, and with them build what I call at the beginning a coalition of sanity, right? Where we can say, look, we're going to disagree about this or that or the other. That's fine. That's why we do. That's why we have Republicans. Some of us are Democrats. But if they can work together with us to get us out of this hole of Trumpism, then we will be able to defeat Trumpism. But remember, I never lose sight of the people. I always call Trumpists on my show brothers and sisters. And by the way, they do call my show. Sometimes they get a little bit angry, but I let them talk. The point is, don't lose communication with the other. Do not demonize the other, but work with the people in the Republican and the conservative movement and say, look, I'm a liberal, I'm a Democrat, but right now, for the sake of the nation, we need to work together to overcome this. And if they can agree with you on this, then that will go a long way to create a situation, a context of sanity where the Trumpists will feel more and more isolated. But right now, we need each other. We need Republicans and Democrats and liberals and conservatives to work together. And Joe Biden has a challenge ahead of him because he has to create a coalition, right? Where people on both sides of the aisle feel comfortable working with him for the good of the nation. And when people start seeing that Joe Biden can do it, that the Democrats and the Republicans can work together, not one party or the other, but both working together for the good of the nation, that's going to be, and that yields results, that is going to be the best way to defeat Trumpism and bury it. Not the people, bury the ideology, which is toxic, dangerous, and harmful to our democracy. And I think that has been demonstrated. I don't have to give you, there's proof enough of that.
So we have to do is love our brother. We
yes,
have
work together. Yeah, work together with them realistically. Listen, I'm not saying we're going to agree with everything. No, but for the good of the nation, right now we have to put our differences aside and work together because Trumpism right now is the biggest threat to our democracy and our stability as a nation.
Professor, it's been a pleasure having you. And we should do this again. And I'm going to listen to your show. It's every day at what time? What
2
time
o'clock.
your show?
Yeah, 2 to 3. Radio Caracol 1260, 1260 AM and FM 101.1.
Thank you. To you.
God bless you.
A very happy New Year. To all our viewers, a very, very happy New Year. Let's make peace. Let's make peace. Let's do the Christian thing. Thank you, Professor.
God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you. Good night. And to you, good night, my friends. Thank you for being with us.